Buckingham Palace or Prince William set a trap for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and were they gullible enough to fall into it?
Again, I have to be careful what I say, but that I won't be able to show, my children.
It's almost laughable at this point. Meghan and Harry, once hailed as the fresh modern faces of royalty, have now managed to turn themselves into global punchline.
It is such a pleasure to be here in my new home of the UK.
What?
They walked away from the palace claiming they wanted privacy. Yet somehow they've done more interviews, documentaries, and tell all books than any working royal in history.
When you have been lied about for a series of years, how hurtful that is.
Privacy, please. That word in their dictionary must mean let's cash in on every secret and grievance we can
Meghan is willing to show pictures of her kids. I think it just depends on how many zeros are at the end of.
Meghan strutted into the royal family as if she was rewriting centuries of tradition, only to discover that Buckingham Palace doesn't bend for Netflix ratings or podcast sponsors.
Meghan views those two children as commercial assets, which is gross.
And Harry, well, poor Harry. Once the cheeky beloved prince, he's now the sidekick in his own story, dragged into California talk shows like a man who traded his crown for kombucha. Meghan needs content.
It's really quite sad.
Irony. They left to protect their children, Archie and Lilibet, from the glare of royal life, only to shove them into the spotlight when it suited the narrative.
Prince William has had enough of Prince Harry's ludicrous claim.
They've built their entire brand on the idea that the palace is cruel and outdated, while simultaneously begging the same institution for recognition and titles.
Prince William will strip his exiled brother Prince Harry's children of their HRH titles when he becomes king.
But apparently for me,
It's like throwing a brick through someone's window, then knocking on the door and asking for tea. And let's not forget the constant contradictions. 1 minute Meghan is crying about how hard royal life was. The next she's posing as a global humanitarian icon draped in couture. Meanwhile, Harry insists he's fighting for his family's dignity while airing every dirty secret about his relatives to the highest bidder. The palace stayed silent for years, watching the circus unfold. But now that silence has snapped, and what they've revealed about Archie and Lilibet cuts deeper than any interview Meghan could stage. But trust me, what comes next will sting even more.
But if she hasn't had the children herself, or Harry hadn't been involved, then they can't be in the royal line. They have to have royal blood, those little ones. Without that, there's no chance of them becoming a member of the royal family.
To understand why Buckingham Palace's move against Archie and Lilibet feels so devastating, you have to go back over a century to a time when royals didn't answer to public opinion, tabloids, or American talk shows. In 1917, King George V issued what's called the Letters Pack, a legal framework that carved in stone exactly who is and who isn't entitled to be called a prince or princess. It wasn't designed to humiliate Harry's kids specifically. It was meant to protect the monarchy from chaos, favoritism, and opportunists trying to sneak in through the back door. The rules are clear. Royal bloodline legitimacy, proper birth registration within the Crown's jurisdiction, and religious recognition through the Church of England. No Hollywood loopholes. No, we're living our truth in Montecito exemptions. It's the ironclad law that's kept the monarchy structured for more than a century. And here's where Meghan and Harry's reality show clashes with hard reality. They treated royal titles like bonus points in a game they could win back with enough PR spin or Netflix specials. But the palace doesn't operate on vibes. It operates on precedent. Those dusty old documents matter more than any tearful interview. That's why the palace has remained icy. Not because of personal vendettas, but because bending those rules once would open floodgates that could drown the entire institution. Imagine if every distant relative, reality TV star, or celebrity spouse could declare their child a prince or princess just because it felt right. That's not monarchy. That's chaos. And whether you love or hate the royals, one thing is undeniable. order is their currency.
Meghan just wants to be an Instagram influencer. That has always been her level, always been her drive. Once everything else has been dried up, the kids are next. The kids were always on the docket to be part of the image selling and everything.
Meghan and Harry gambled by betting that their celebrity clout could pressure Buckingham Palace into rewriting history. Instead, the palace just reminded them of a brutal truth. Royalty isn't a brand you can repackage. It's a system that doesn't care about your California mansion, your Spotify deals, or your carefully curated sob stories. And for Archie and Lilibet, that system just slammed the door shut. Do you think the palace was protecting tradition or just punishing Meghan and Harry? Drop your thoughts below. Archie's arrival in 2019 should have been the perfect storybook moment. A royal baby born into history, cheered by crowds, plastered across front pages with the kind of fanfare only Britain can stage. Instead, it quickly spiraled into one of the most bizarre controversies the monarchy has ever faced. First, everything looked normal. The palace released the announcement. The world celebrated and Meghan and Harry smiled for the cameras. But then came the curveball. Archie's birth certificate was mysteriously altered. Meghan's legal name vanished, replaced with a grand but vague Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. No explanation, no precedent, no consistency with past royal records. Even Diana, even Kate, kept their names on official documents. So why strip Meghan's? Was it her choice, the palace's command, or some botched attempt to reframe Archie's status? That one unusual change cracked open a Pandora's box of speculation. Was the palace distancing itself? Was Meghan trying to erase her old identity? And most importantly, why would something as simple as a child's birth record become such a political landmark? This wasn't a harmless clerical error. It was a signal that Archie's place in the royal ledger wasn't as secure as people assumed.
In this case, about whether you think the birth was real, whether you think there was a surrogate, whether you think Meghan was wearing a moon bump, the fact is, Harry and Meghan lied. Buckingham Palace lied on their behalf. There was a complete cover-up over the birth of Prince.
Every royal baby before him had their paperwork aligned with tradition. But Archie's birth certificate looked like an outlier. And in monarchy speak, an outlier is a warning shot. The world saw a happy baby wrapped in blankets, but behind the scenes, the paperwork was already whispering, "This child may never fully belong." If Archie's birth sparked suspicion, Lilibet's arrival turned that suspicion into a deafening alarm bell. Born in California in 2021, she entered the world not with trumpets, official bulletins, or the grand traditions of St. Mary's Hospital. No balcony appearance, no framed announcement outside Buckingham Palace, but with a press release from Harry and Meghan's PR team in California. For a royal baby, that absence of ceremony was staggering. Every royal child for generations, no matter how far down the line of succession, received at least some acknowledgement from the crown. Lilibet got none. There was no official statement from the Queen, no formal registry in the palace records, no sign that her birth had even rippled through the centuries-old machinery of monarchy. It wasn't just an omission. It was a declaration. The palace didn't ignore her out of forgetfulness. It ignored her because recognition itself carries weight. Acknowledging her would have meant embedding her into the fabric of royal history, tying her name to traditions that stretch back hundreds of years. By staying silent, the palace signaled exactly where it stood. Lilibet was Meghan and Harry's daughter. Yes, but she wasn't and never would be a royal heir in the official sense. It was the sharpest contrast imaginable, where other royal babies were treated like symbols of continuity. Lilibet's arrival was treated like an American family announcement, warmly personal, but wholly detached from crown and country. In royal terms, that silence spoke louder than any proclamation ever could. A royal baptism has always been more than a christening. It's a symbolic binding of the child to both the Church of England and the monarchy itself. Its ceremony, heritage, and legitimacy rolled into one sacred ritual.
Buckingham Palace is being pressured to remove Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet from the UK's royal line of succession until the Duchess provides absolute proof that she popped out both babies herself.
For Leet, however, that crucial moment never truly happened in the eyes of the institution. Yes, Meghan and Harry hosted a baptism in California, complete with celebrity friends and their own sense of celebration. But the Church of England never formally recorded it, and that omission carries massive weight. Without that official recognition, Leet's name is absent from the spiritual and ceremonial records that Crown history depends on. It's not about belief, it's about protocol. Every royal baby before her, from William down to Louis, had their baptism logged as part of the kingdom's religious lineage, a vital link in the chain. Lilith's was essentially treated as private family business, no different than any Hollywood star's christening of their child in a Malibu estate. That choice or rejection, depending on how you view it, left her floating in a strange limbo. She's adored by her parents, celebrated in California circles, but invisible in the annals of royal tradition. And for a monarchy obsessed with continuity, omission is as loud as disowning. It meant that spiritually and symbolically, Leet was not brought into the fold. While Meghan and Harry may view that moment as heartfelt, the palace views it as incomplete. And incomplete in royal language means invalid. Meghan and Harry's entire public persona hinges on one thing: their royal connection. Strip that away, and what's left? Two former working royals trying to survive in an industry where relevance fades fast. Their billion-dollar brand was built on the tension between palace duty and personal freedom. But that narrative weakens when their children, supposed proof of their ongoing royal lineage, are left without titles or recognition. Suddenly, Meghan's carefully curated identity as a modern duchess and global mother figure looks shaky. The documentaries that promised an inside look at royal life start to resemble nothing more than reality TV confessionals. Even Harry's memoir, which positioned him as the misunderstood prince, loses some gravity if the very institution he criticizes refuses to acknowledge his own children. Without the royal titles, Archie and Leet aren't seen as heirs deny. They're seen as American kids living in privilege.
Meghan is using everything for publicity and not really truly there. We know how she treats her family.
Removed from the drama they're meant to symbolize. And for Meghan, whose lifestyle ventures, brand partnerships, and speeches often lean heavily on her royal past, that loss is devastating. She doesn't stand in the same line as Diana or Kate because her children were never truly woven into the monarchy's legacy. The palace has in essence yanked away the foundation on which her global image rests. Instead of projecting power, the Sussexes risk looking like outsiders clinging to relevance, a brand with no roots. And in the world of royalty, perception is everything. Once the crown withdraws recognition, the illusion collapses. For Prince Harry, the palace's stance wasn't just a matter of protocol. It was personal heartbreak carved into stone. Reports suggest he made repeated appeals behind closed doors, hoping to persuade the institution to secure his children's positions in royal history. But every effort was met with the same frosty response. Rules, not feelings. Decide legacy. For a man who grew up in the shadow of tragedy and constant scrutiny, this was a crushing blow. Harry wasn't only fighting for recognition. He was fighting for continuity, for his children to remain tethered to the family that shaped and scarred his entire life. Friends close to him describe a man torn between anger and desperation, watching the gates of history lock shut on Archie and Leet while the world debated whether they ever belonged at all. In his mind, this wasn't just protocol. It was rejection of his own family line. Yet, in the palace's view, emotions couldn't outweigh centuries of law. And so, every plea only highlighted the chasm between Harry's California reality and the monarchy's unyielding tradition. What stings most is that Harry knows what inclusion feels like. He lived it until he walked away. Now he's facing the brutal reality of exclusion, not for himself, but for his children. And perhaps the most painful part, his pleas didn't fail because he lacked passion. They failed because in the monarchy's eyes, passion has no authority. Do you believe Harry's emotional pleas were genuine or just another PR move? I want to hear your take. When the palace finally moved, it didn't whisper, it thundered. Legal filings confirmed what years of silence had already implied. Archie and Lilibet were officially cut out of the royal framework. No titles, no succession rights, no security privileges. In royal terms, that isn't just a demotion. It's total eraser. The monarchy doesn't make such moves lightly, and when it does, it sends a message that echoes for generations.
William despises Harry and Meghan at this stage, and when he is king, his fury will rain down on them. He has absolutely no intention to allow Archie and Lilibet to use.
For Meghan and Harry's children, this wasn't about being less important. It was about being removed from the equation altogether. Their names may appear in headlines, but they won't appear in the lineage that defines the Windsor dynasty. And that's the cruel irony. The children didn't ask for this fight, but they'll grow up bearing the consequence of choices made by their parents and enforced by an institution that refuses to bend. To the palace, this was preservation, protecting the sanctity of rules written more than a century ago. To outsiders, it looks brutal, even cold. Yet, the monarchy has always thrived on one principle: survival above sentiment. For Archie and Lilibet, that survival meant closing the door permanently, locking them out of the heritage their father once embodied. The curtain has fallen, not with ceremony, but with paperwork that wipes their royal identity from history. And in that act, Buckingham Palace drew a line so sharp that no amount of Hollywood deals, Netflix specials, or emotional interviews could ever cross it. And so, the story of Archie and Lilibet doesn't end with fairy tale titles or gilded succession charts. It ends with silence, signatures, and the chilling finality of being erased from royal history. What Buckingham Palace has done here is more than a legal move. It's a statement carved into the monarchy's DNA. One that will echo far beyond California's sunny mansions and Netflix cameras. Archie and Lilibet may grow up loved, privileged, and entirely free from palace control, but they'll always carry the weight of being the heirs who weren't. Their parents fought for recognition, spun narratives, and challenged traditions. But in the end, the monarchy reminded the world that heritage isn't negotiable. It's enforced. And that leaves us with the lingering question: did Meghan and Harry ever truly understand the system they were up against? Or did they think celebrity power could rewrite centuries of order? The truth is harsh and it's final. But this saga is only one chapter in the ongoing royal drama. Because every decision has ripple effects, and every silence hides another secret. If you thought this revelation was shocking, wait until you see what came before. Go watch my previous video right now and you'll understand how all of this was foreshadowed long